If you're setting relationship goals or intentions this year, but you're already feeling burned out, you're struggling to find time for yourself while also staying connected to your partner or dating life, your friends, your family, a wider community, then this video is for you. I've witnessed this particular pattern with clients. Folks who work really hard, they say yes, they overcommit until they're completely burnt out, and then on a course correction, they try to pull back and end up feeling really disconnected from all of the people and from the causes that matter most to them. As a mental health professional, I know that our relationships are vital for our well-being. I've also struggled to hold all of these different relationships and all of the other things that we have to do on a day-to-day basis. In this video, I'm offering a bit of structure and sort of a reframe for how we think about relationships so that we can still be really intentional, but in a sustainable, manageable way. So to help you set better relationship goals without burning out, I'm introducing what I'm calling the relationship ecosystem. It was created from the premise that our sense of self and our relationships are layered. They're interconnected. They do not exist in isolation. This is why when, we feel neglected or this relationship over here feels strained or overextended, we kind of see these impacts pop up in other areas and other relationships in our lives. So in the relationship ecosystem that I created, I'm focusing on 4 different categories. And these categories may or may not be helpful for you. You can feel free to draw it differently, add or subtract different categories of relationships depending on what works. The ones that I'm going to focus on are the relationship with the self, romantic or intimate relationships, friends, family, including chosen family, and last but not least, community. When I look at this relationship ecosystem and all of these concentric circles, I envision these like waves going from the outside and the inside, kind of this never-ending cycle of relationships and energy and intentions flowing from one to another. When things are connected, like in an ecosystem, when one part is cared for, we often see that reflected in the whole. So as we go through the layers of this ecosystem, I want to invite you to listen for one small shift that could send positive ripple effects throughout other relationships and other parts of your life. At the end, I will explain how you can figure out which layer, which aspect of your ecosystem to focus on. And I will share a free tool that I created to help you do this at your own pace. But for now, let's walk through the relationship ecosystem map. So we're starting with the relationship with the self in the center. Now, I put the self in the center because I do consider it more or less foundational. If this layer is depleted, often we notice every other relationship, every aspect of our lives really becomes more effortful. And by putting in the center, I'm not saying you should be self-centered, but more self-resourced. We're not talking about productivity levels, okay? We are talking about things like your energy levels, your self-confidence, your esteem, your inner voice, your emotional awareness, how you hold boundaries, right? With your rest, with your capacity for things, saying yes, saying no. And another big one I'm thinking about is self-trust, right? Do you follow through on the things that you say you're going to do? Do you show up for yourself as good as you show up for other people? So if you were going to set an intention or goal for this circle, for this layer, it could sound like one non-negotiable solo ritual per week. Maybe you feel like you need to work on your boundaries or your capacity. So maybe setting an intention like, I want to check in with myself before saying yes, right? Having something on your phone or a post-it or something that reminds you to take a second and check in with yourself before saying yes or no to an event. One of the key components of this relationship ecosystem model that is going to prevent you from feeling burnt out and split all over the place is to really think about how each layer of your ecosystem is related or connected to the others. For example, in the relationship with the self, I know that when I'm paying attention to my boundaries and I feel attuned to my needs, I tend to have less conflict with other people. I'm not disappointing folks. I'm not saying yes to stuff and then having to cancel last minute, which happens on occasion, but I'm not overextending myself. I'm not saying yes to something and then resenting that person or resenting doing that thing for someone. When I'm caring for myself consistently, I am not putting as much on my partner to carry or hold or to hear me vent. When I've cultivated self-trust, it reduces other strain in my relationships because I'm not negotiating every need in real time with other people. We're going to move right into the romantic or intimate or erotic part of our relationship ecosystem. ecosystem. And this circle is for folks who are partnered, who are dating, who are single or intentionally and maybe attachment oriented. But this can also be for folks who want to explore their erotic life. And eroticism, I think, can be really expansive when it comes to desire and pleasure and play and creativity. And maybe that's with others, maybe that's with yourself. Or if this is not a part of your ecosystem that you're interested in, or it's not relevant to you, then you can skip it. For some folks who are partnered or maybe in a long-term relationship, this might refer to your primary attachment relationship. And that's often your most emotionally interdependent one, but not always. Starting for folks who are dating or interested in exploring sexual or romantic energy or additional connections. In this arena, I invite you to think about how you engage with romantic or sexual energy, not about outcomes. If you're interested in dating, maybe you do a short experiment and you try a new platform for a couple weeks, see what you think. Maybe you want to practice initiating, whether that's sending the first like or message or being the first to name interest or practice asking someone out. Maybe your intention is to practice flirting with no attachment to the outcome. One question that I've asked clients before that could be an intention is to notice how they respond to attraction. Do they lean in? Do they freeze? Do they avoid? Do they fantasize? If you're partnered, I've found that a lot of people struggle to maintain intimacy and connection in the midst of very busy lives and often don't have a consistent touch point for ongoing conversations. Having a reliable way to check in and come back to each other, especially during periods of stress or after conflict or distance, is really helpful in maintaining intimacy. That's why I really value weekly relationship check-ins. So if you are partnered, or if you just want structure, maybe for future relationships or even just for yourself, I offer subscribers to my Substack a free relationship check-in bundle. And what that is it's several worksheets with guided questions and a way to help folks have values-based conversations about their relationship. Having that weekly relationship check-in is a really good way to talk through any issues, to make sure you're all on the same page, and to just continue growing and making sure that you're attuned to one another and your needs. If you want that free bundle, make sure you just check out the link down below. But going back to our relationship ecosystem, I invite you to think about how attending to your romantic partnership or sexual relationships or your intimate or erotic life can have positive impacts across your relationship ecosystem. Intimate relationships, when they're fulfilling and they're positive and they're attended to, can be really powerful sources of co-regulation. So when they feel really steady, when they feel really supportive, they strengthen our self-regulation and they ultimately reduce reactivity throughout the entire system. Another thing to think about is that erotic energy isn't exclusive to sexual connection, but when tended to, it does fuel vitality. It connects people to pleasure, to curiosity, to play, to sensation. And when folks are able to access those things and feel more alive in their bodies, they tend to be more patient and more creative and more generous elsewhere. When this layer is ignored, a lot of people find that other parts of their lives and other relationships tend to feel really strained, but they might not really know why. Moving on to the next layer of our ecosystem is friends and family, including chosen family. When I think about friends and chosen family, I think about consistency in our lives, right? And support and a network and really a chance to be known and to be seen and to be heard. This is also the layer that I've noticed tends to erode first, and not usually in one big rupture, although sometimes more quietly erodes. A lot of times people go through life transitions, and it's whether they're becoming parents or moving or starting a new business or school. It can be really hard to maintain relationships during all of those different changes. There's a scarcity of energy as we all have all of these things on our plates, and especially if you want to make new friends or maintain your old ones, it can be tough. There's also this diffusion of responsibility where everyone's waiting for the other person to reach out. If this is an area of focus for you or you want it to be, one reframe I want to offer here is it's not really about the frequency, it's more about continuity over time. Some examples of intentions could be one recurring check-in. I have a group of friends and we've been doing this thing for the past year, and it's honestly one of the most successful, consistent parts of my life when it comes to friends, and I'm really proud of us. We get together together every month for brunch. We have around 6 of us, sometimes more, sometimes we bring partners, it just depends. Sometimes people bring kids, and we have brunch at someone's house and we rotate who hosts. Everybody brings whatever dish, whatever thing they can bring, whatever they have capacity for. So really low barrier, keep it minimal. And we just chat, and it's such a lovely thing, and I'm so grateful to have these wonderful humans in my life. Oh, and the thing that really makes this work, this is really the clincher, is every time we get together, we decide on the next brunch before we leave. So we're all together in the same place. If someone is not able to make it, we text them right then and we get it on the calendar. So we're scheduling a month out. This is what's kept us really consistent. And if you have friends that are far away, or maybe that's even too hard, maybe it's a voice note. I love when my friends start a podcast. I love send me a 10-minute or longer voice note with your update about your life. I love it. And if that feels like a low barrier, low effort way to stay in touch and at least give updates, give that a try. And sometimes setting intentions is actually about doing less. This can be a hard thing, but I've certainly noticed as I've gotten older and things have fluctuated in my life that sometimes you have to be really particular about who you spend your time with. And maybe some of your relationships aren't as fulfilling as they once were. So instead of trying to maintain every single friendship that you have, think about who are the people that really feel like those anchor people to you, right? Those folks that keep you grounded. Maybe things feel really mutual, really equitable in your friendship. You feel refreshed or energized or inspired when you leave hangouts with them, and not feeling like burnt out and sad or just down after hanging out with them, because that can be a sign that maybe that's not a relationship that is necessarily worth investing more of your time in. And I also think accepting that relationships do have to change form sometimes. People do have different constraints and different capacity, and just being honest with one another about that. And if you think something is up, asking about it. If you feel some kind of way, sharing that instead of making assumptions or making up stories. So how and why is caring for our friendships and our chosen family relevant to our other relationships? One thing that I found to be really true is consistent friendships bring continuity that stabilizes other relationships, even through really big transitions like breakups. I also know that being witnessed and known and loved by friends can really strengthen my own sense of self. I have a lot of friends that I share values with as well, and I've found that friends tend to be a bridge to a wider community, which brings us to our last layer of our ecosystem. The fourth circle in the relationship ecosystem is the community and collective care circle. Community is one of those words that's been used so much lately that it's almost like it's lost its meaning. It's been used so much. To me, community is where we remember that we are part of something larger than ourselves and our immediate relationships. Community evokes a sense of belonging and shared purpose, along with new ideas and new perspectives, and sometimes challenges. I think of self and community as kind of two edges of this larger ecosystem. The self anchors us in integrity, and the community anchors us in meaning beyond ourselves. One keeps us aligned with our needs, and one keeps us aligned with what we care about. Community spaces, third spaces, are incredibly important, especially in existing systems of oppression. In particular, for folks who live on the margins, having a community space, community connections, where those spaces are at least somewhat protected and meant for people who share those experiences can be really invaluable. And whether you hold identities that are privileged or minoritized, there are ways that we can support protected spaces for marginalized folks in our local or greater communities. Maybe that's attending events or patronizing businesses that host these spaces, or donating money or services to an org or a space or a community. There's a lot of very important rhetoric online about the cost of community and connection being inconvenience. And while I do think that can be true, I invite folks to think about one or two ways that they can maybe cultivate some community without totally burning out. One way to do this is to just start showing up somewhere. Be semi-regular somewhere. That could be online, that could be at a coffee shop, that could be at a volunteer group or a mutual aid group or a workout class. And especially when I think about mutual aid and volunteering and these other ways that we can support one another in community spaces, I think about how we reduce burnout, because we are literally distributing goods and services and our skills and workloads so that we can release some of the pressure on ourselves individually. If you become a regular somewhere, learn someone's name that you see all the time, whether that's the bartender, the barista, a neighbor. Share your own name, share share your pronouns, and just start to bridge that connection from strangers to community. Being a regular can also extend to digital spaces. There's lots of online groups. Sometimes they join on Zoom, sometimes there's other forums, Discord, whatever the case may be. Those spaces also can feel more accessible for some folks and be a nice starting point if you don't feel comfortable going in person somewhere. And expanding our networks into community means that we're inviting and just naturally experiencing different perspectives. And I think that that helps to not only expand our worldview, but it can soften our response to conflict in interpersonal relationships and ultimately increase resilience in those relationships as well. So if you've made it this far, but you are still wondering, okay, but how do I set relationship intentions, especially if I'm worried about burning out? Here are the specific questions I want you to think about. If I were to care for one layer more intentionally, how might that layer reduce strain and support the rest of my relationship ecosystem? To ask it another way, where would one small shift have the greatest ripple effect? This is the crux of this relationship ecosystem and how we prevent burnout. Instead of feeling like we have to attend to every single relationship we have and set specific intentions and goals for that category or that person, we think about what could we focus on that could have the greatest impact across all of our relationships. This is how we prevent burnout. So maybe for this year, you pick one intention for yourself, for your relationship with yourself, and maybe one other layer. That's it. Maybe you just pick one, whatever works for you. I did not forget about the free resource. So if you've made it this far, but you want help applying this to your own life, I have made a free 3-page relationship ecosystem worksheet for all my newsletter subscribers, which you can find in the link in the description. This 3-page worksheet goes over a lot more than I did in this video and really walks you through how you can use this structure to attune to your own needs and your own relationships in a very intentional and sustainable way. If you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to check out some of my other ones, and I'm wishing you all a peaceful, sustainable next chapter.